well, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Milton Fire Commission to order. We'll start with the confirmation of appropriate meeting notices. Jenny?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Next, we'll go to approval of agenda. I know the agenda as it's been posted has a lot of old business. Is there any changes or changing the order in which we want to discuss these items? I would recommend that we move item B underneath the contract towns update, so that whatever pertinent information that's given for the consolidation, the staffing shortages, and the township contracts can be taken into consideration when we're talking about item B. So,
John,
go ahead, Linda.
I would also like to remove item E and F for next month's meeting. I feel like we are going to have a very large discussion. And these are things that really can't have a lot of discussion on until we go through the other items on the agenda. And I would also request that any of our public comments or department comments other than the chief come under the public participation.
Okay, that works for me as far as getting the next month agenda straightened out. As far as this month's agenda, though, or do you want to keep those on the agenda? Was that your intention?
No, I would like to remove item.
This, okay.
Yes, I would like to, I'll just make the motion to remove item E and F from the agenda and review next month, and to also relocate item A under.
Item B or item A, Linda?
Oh, I'm sorry, item B.
Okay.
Under D.
Okay. It's been so moved by Linda.
Second.
Seconded by Brian. Discussion real quick. I do want to mention that if it is of interest of the Fire Commission to potentially pursue referendum for April 2021, and we do not discuss it in December, whether we have another meeting in December to discuss the issue, or we move it into January potentially, then we're likely not going to be able to even have this on the agenda because the time frame will become so short. We will no longer be able to coordinate and get this on the agendas for the respective towns in the city. So just keep that in mind. If we're not interested in pursuing as a commission potential of a referendum in 2021, then that has an effect if we don't do it at this meeting. So if there's no other discussion, all right, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of moving agenda items as stated and removing items E and F, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. We'll move the items from item B down below item D and remove items E and F. So that brings us on to approval of the agenda. So
John, I
let's,
just wanted to clarify on that last motion. I
Go
saw
ahead.
at least 2 nays. Do we have 4 ayes?
were they hands that were raised? I didn't hear a voice.
Teresa and
So,
Bill
okay.
expressed a nay vote.
I
Yes.
apologize. I did not see that.
Was there a third or?
Let's go ahead and do a
Thank you.
roll call vote on that, just to make it clear. Sometimes the audio doesn't work on devices very well. We'll go to a roll call vote on the previous motion, and that'll be a little bit more streamlined. Brian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Teresa, how do you vote?
Nay.
Bill, how do you vote?
No.
Beth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I vote no.
Motion fails.
Motion fails.
I think if we raise hands for motions and to speak, it would be easier for everybody to see what other people are doing. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, and just a comment, it's not that so much that I'm opposed to what Linda said, but
we need to find out about referendum to make sure.
I would agree.
Okay,
Yeah,
I want
I
that
would-
clarified first.
And I do think it's a very important topic that needs to be discussed, and we really haven't even touched the iceberg on it. It's going to be a long meeting regardless of the conversations, just because of the amount of information that needs to come through. But I would agree.
I didn't
So-
realize the timeline, so.
Well, and I'll say that the whole reason that I did that is because we are in the other discussions, we will be discussing the timeline for a referendum.
Right,
So, but that is a part of the other agenda items.
but we're locked. Once we make this decision, we can't change it. So,
Since
Okay.
we don't have a motion on the floor,
Okay.
approval of the agenda, I move to approve the agenda with modifying, taking item 5B after 5D on approval of the agenda. That's my
Okay.
motion.
It has been moved.
I'll second that.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the approval of the agenda while moving line item 5B down below 5D?
Do we still want to have a discussion on the fire building? Because that was one of the reasons that I made the motion that I did, was because I didn't feel like we needed to discuss a new fire station at this point in time. And I'm just thinking, I really think that we're going to have some long and good discussions here. And I just feel like I don't want the meeting to go on real late.
We've got an active motion though on one item. We can follow up with the fire station if you want.
Well, and keep in mind, we don't have to take action, or we don't necessarily have to discuss line item E. So if there's nothing to discuss in the line item, we can move to the next item. If we decide that it no longer becomes valid conversation for the night. So it can be on the agenda. We don't have to discuss it, but at least it's on the agenda to discuss if necessary. So the pending motion on the floor is to approve the agenda with the consideration of 5B being moved below item 5D. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion passes. Five yeas and one no, one nay. That brings us on to approval of minutes from November 18th, 2020.
I would move approval.
Motion by Bill,
Second.
seconded by Beth to approve last month, November 18th, 2020's meeting minutes. Any discussion or corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to public participation. Is there anyone tonight's meeting that would like to discuss anything otherwise not on the agenda?
And just to note, if you are trying to speak, you need to unmute yourself. There's the mute button in the lower left-hand corner, or it's *6 to unmute if you're on a phone.
Nobody would like to speak tonight under public participation that is not otherwise on the agenda? That brings us to old business. Discussion and possible action regarding staffing shortages. Chief, leave this one on you. Is Chief Rhodes on still? I believe so.
Yeah.
Yep, he's here. Otherwise, if the deputy chiefs, battalion chiefs would like to say anything on this matter, staffing shortages, and kind of where we're at the moment.
I see the chief is muted.
I don't know if the chief's gonna jump back on.
Yeah, I'm here. What
Sorry.
was, John, I'm having connectivity issues.
Oh, no worries. We're talking about the staffing shortages and getting an update if there's been any
Yeah,
issues
yeah.
with the close of the year.
So it's slightly better. We still have shifts that we don't have a full shift filled. It's kind of hit and miss. So could be once a shift, could be once every 2 or 3 days. But we're still having difficulty filling the entire shift through the weekend on the weekend. So really nothing's changed.
All right. Any commission members have anything that they'd like to respond in this item? Go ahead, Linda.
I'm just wondering, Chief, if there's any way that you could just maybe give us an idea of the coverage that we're getting from Janesville right now on these weekends that we don't have enough coverage?
Been managed. So if we have a weekend to where we are, let's say, just have 3 on, then we would respond to the alarm that comes in first, an EMS call or fire call. And then it would be filled in automatically with the automatic vehicle, the AVL process. There would be an engine or an ambulance that would fill in and respond to the Milton area and the call.
Were we good for Thanksgiving week?
I know there was one weekend a while back where it was pretty short staffed. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't recall exactly what that is, unless Jenny may have the schedule in front of her and she can answer that for Thanksgiving.
Yes, Thanksgiving we did have covered. We did have people at the station and we had people at home that were on standby.
Good. Okay.
All right. Anything else on the staffing shortage item? All right. We'll move on to our next item, which is the new item B, which is currently in the old item C. It's discussion and possible action regarding update from the meeting with the city of Janesville and the consolidation. So go ahead, Chief. I don't know if you were going to talk or if Dan was, or.
The meeting, are you referring to the financial projection, that meeting?
Yes, we can talk about that on this one, I guess, preliminary, and then kind of talk about what your findings were in that regard.
Okay, so as far as the continued meetings with upper leadership between the township and the city and Janesville, we're still trying to get those scheduled for additional conversations. And I would assume those conversations would be, if the commission chooses to go forth with consolidation, it would be dotting the i's and crossing the t's, for example. And so I can answer any questions on that, if there's any. And if not, I'll move on to, I guess, the memo that Dan sent out, that him and I worked on, met with Max Gang, the Director of Finance for the City of Janesville.
Chief, could you, did we have the discussions with Janesville with regards to the suggestions that we were giving them with the consolidation and the things that we had said that we were looking for? I think you and Brian and Anissa were gonna talk to Janesville about those things.
Yes, there hasn't been a lot of recent input other than our fire department attorney, Brooke, had looked at the proposed intergovernmental agreement and a shared services model. I believe that there was a couple of tweak things, but overall didn't see anything that stood out as a large concern by Brooke. I was a little bit surprised that there wasn't more tweaking to dotting the i's and crossing the t's on it, but there hasn't been any recent feedback since some of that review.
Mhm.
And that was going to go into discussion that the chief alluded to, which hasn't taken place just yet.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other information we want to include in the consolidation with City of Janesville update?
Chief Rhodes and I put together that memo that I sent out, I believe it was Monday morning, Monday afternoon. I sent it to everyone on the town board and on the city council. Kind of just walking through the financial piece. The big, it clearly shows that consolidation is significantly cheaper than a standalone over a 5-year period. And Chief and I tried to outline some of the actions that would happen with a functional merger, assuming that the town board passes the addendum, and then that'll get passed on to the city of Janesville for their approval once that happens. And then that 5-year cost summary, I can walk people through it. I can put it up on the screen, or I can take questions. I don't know what people's preferences are.
Why don't you put it up on the screen, Dan?
Okay. Do you want to set that up for me, Inga?
Yep, you should be able to now.
Okay.
And while Dan's doing that, this is Ernie. I did not receive any emails from anybody for any questions for the consolidation as requested. So just to let you all know that.
Thank you.
And it should be noted that we're talking about operating expenses. The initial assumption so far, until we get further into discussions, are that capital expenditures would still remain solely with the current department until we move further on that, and if that evolves into something different. Because these are operating expenses.
Well, there is a capital component. This 5-year model that I have on the screen, which I think everyone can see now. Everyone can,
Oh, there's a capital contribution.
wrong screen. There we go. These projections, similar to the presentations that we did earlier this summer, do include a capital component in year 1. And then the only difference is looking at a 5-year average, we decided to include a inflationary of 2% on that. And you'll notice, as I outlined in the memo, as is common with a lot of public safety contracts, there's a significant increase that happened to wages at various stages in the first 5 years of a contract.
Dan, my screen switched over to the map. I don't know if that's what everyone else is. There we go.
All right.
Super.
Sorry. It said I was sharing this. I got 3 monitors here, so. So anyways, this line here, similar to the presentations this summer, do include a capital component. And we still believe in today's dollars that over a 10-year period, about 1.75 million would be needed for fleet replacement and that sort of thing. For 2 ambulances, an engine, help me out, Ernie, there were a couple other things in there, generally speaking. Maybe.
That's in capital.
You there, Ernie?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Engine, ambulance, tender, the normal replacement. Based on the calculation, this would be enough set aside every year to be able to support the fire station.
And then, as I was saying, the public safety contracts have significant increases in wages in year 3 and year 5, as evident right here, with 73,000 being kind of the average salary for someone at the 3-year mark. And we didn't run a detailed analysis on the standalone just because it would get very difficult without having a contract or some sort of parameters to apply. But you can see in year 1, the cost difference is about $470,000 between a consolidation and a standalone. And overall, if we were to do a referendum, as I alluded to in the memo, we'd probably be looking at about 1.4 million. And then we just have to figure out the cost breakout using equalized value to determine how much each municipality would pay towards that. And the only reason I didn't provide that is when I was working on this, we had no idea who might still be in or out of the coverage area. And as we alluded to in the memo, the recommendation would be, in order to retain a sustainable staffing model and operations, the chief recommends to begin the process to a full consolidation. And obviously the addendum to the existing agreement kind of gets us down that path already. And then it's just a matter of figuring out the funding. And obviously this is all assuming passage of referendums at various times. Is there anything else you want to add, Chief?
Dan, I have a quick question here. So at year 5 on the wages category, why is it such a significant difference between year 5? Oh, excuse me, that's the year 5 average. Between, like in 5 years, you believe that the wages are going to increase $500,000 over about the current allocation?
Yep, that's the way they're structured in the union contract. There's at year 3, you can see there's about a 35% increase. And then there's another wage jump at year 5. That's just how the Janesville union contract is structured.
Okay.
Dan, can you send this to me? I never received this for the records.
Oh, sure.
Thank
I
you.
think too, it's also important to note that the 2 wages on the standalone is a lesser wage, and then the consolidation is a better wage for employees. And so with the standalone, you will be lagging the market as far as wage and benefits. And so that could prove to be a problem as far as retaining people in the long run. So it's important to note that.
Chief, do you know what formula you used as far as the wages for employees to come up with that number for a standalone model?
We used what we had talked about this spring, and all I did was do a 2% increase each year.
Based off of the $15 an hour wage?
No, it was 17 something.
Okay.
Because this is the full-time salary amount of 52,000 at year 1, and then it's 2%. And then I just guessed on what like an HR, payroll, and accounting services might be. I have no idea. That might be really high, might be really low. I have no idea. I never vetted that number at all.
Okay.
And then we just took the current operating budget and added some additional dollars for workers' comp and things of that nature, because we're, doubling the staff size, so to speak, and increasing wages. So.
Mm-hmm. So since we're talking a lot about more of the item that we moved on the agenda down below D, let's go ahead and move into contracts, and then we can continue kind of more detailed discussion about the the actual situation between a standalone model and a consolidation model. So we'll touch on contracts. There's a little bit to talk about there, and then we'll kind of transition back into that line item. So we do have on contracts, some of our contracted towns responded back. Lima, Johnstown, and Harmony all responded that they would be signing the contracts if they haven't already been sent back, that they were approved. Koshkanon is something that we are going to have to discuss. Koshkanon has looked for alternative fire department services since Fort Atkinson provides a service for most of Koshkanon as it stands. This would be something that they're kind of already in that general vicinity, except there's one part that Fort Atkinson can't cover or chose not to, and that was on the information that we had received from Dan right on the tip of the island that just stems right into Koshkanon Township. And let me pull up that document here. Dan, can you screen share that one, please?
Yep. You can see this, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Now can you?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so you can see right up, is it
Tebow Point.
Tebow Point? Okay, that's a French word. I'm not good with the French words. So yeah, Tebow Point, it's a very small area, and therefore it changed dramatically the amount of contribution from Koshkanon. So I guess we need to discuss what exactly our wishes are to the options that were presented, how we want to respond to how Koshkanon perceives the situation that they have.
And when I talked with the town chair several times, Bill Burlingame, I think his last name is, he had alluded to that the town board was going to be meeting tonight at 7 o'clock, but they had a closed session prior to this. Otherwise, he probably would have joined at the beginning of this to hear this discussion. But I told him I would let him know I would email him what this body decides. So then, because they've got it on their agenda, and then he'll email me back when they, and assuming our meeting is still going on, I'll be able to provide hopefully a fairly immediate response.
I also spoke with Bill, and they seem inclined to go with Fort Atkinson for Bingham Point area. Tebow Point, Fort Atkinson didn't feel they could cover it. So he's still interested in whatever that number might be for Tebow Point from us. But he did express, and I think to Dan also, he wasn't happy about the formula of valuation, a percentage of the whole town, or that footprint there for expensive homes. He didn't like the formula in general for calculating the cost for that area. Basically, I just told him our initial approach was we thought this was the fairest model to everybody, including the other towns. So that's pretty much what that discussion had.
I would just say that if they're not interested in the model that we're offering, then just let them off and to go with Fort Atkinson in the portion that they like, and that's it.
Yeah. But they did express the probably need a Tebow Point.
Yeah, well, that would be their issue to find that coverage.
I don't believe there's any houses on that small section. It was straight undeveloped forest or wetland up there. So
He said there's a couple.
Was there a
There's
couple? Okay.
dozen and a half. There's a few homes, yes.
And
Okay.
he said there's a really big one. I don't know where it is, but he said it was a house that cost close to $1 million to put up. Because there is $1.7 million of the value there. So it's not all just marshland.
Okay, I thought the last conversation I had with him, it wasn't, but all right, must have been something else we were talking about at the time. So, yeah, that's $3,300 additional. Is that would be of that coverage area?
Nope, to cover that area, I think I said, no,
33.
Fort Atkinson was offering to cover Bingham Point for 3,300.
That's the one. Okay, so
Using the equalized value, just to cover Bingham Point, it'd be $1,728 using equalized value.
giving us about roughly a 16.5 difference, roughly.
18,000.
Eight.
Because their
Right.
contract's 19.8,
Okay.
or the
Could I
proposed
ask-
contract, I should say.
Could I ask, I realize we're discussing dollars, but Fort Atkinson walked away from Tebow Point without being able to cover it. We feel that we are able to cover it.
We have been.
Understood, but what was the rationale for Fort not being able to, I guess is my question. I'm inclined to go with what Teresa says. I realize that there's maybe 1 or 2 homes out there. I also realize that it's a very long road, and is this going to be prohibitive for us? I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
We've been covering it. Fort Atkinson, I assume that it's the proximity and accessibility. That you gotta go through Charlie Bluff to get to it.
John,
Go ahead.
I have to agree with what Teresa said. We just cannot go back and change all of these formulas out for 1 or 2 of our townships. We've done a lot of work on this, and this is how we have figured we're going to be able to sustain a department.
I would suggest that we probably, in the scheme of financial planning, we assume that Town of Kashnan is not going to use our services at all. Maybe in the near future, maybe the very near future, they'll take on Tebow Point with us. But I think for the purposes of budgeting and whatnot, maybe we just assume that they're not going to use us at all for the time being.
Right.
I would
So
agree with, I don't think Brian's approach is really incompatible with what Teresa is suggesting.
Yeah.
You know, we, for budgetary purposes, just don't count on Kashkanang at all. If subsequently they come back to us and say, Fort Atkinson really can't do it, you know, we can't get fire coverage, they can come up with an offer, but for budgetary purposes, just take Kashkanang out of the formula.
So on the remainder, $18,000 deficit then, my presumption would be that the town of Milton then would be picking the rest of that up. And part of that understanding that with a lower equalized value, we would be budgeting for the higher equal share contribution just to ensure that we can still make 2021 budget work within the parameters as it was given. So is that everyone else's understanding?
I believe that the town of Milton and the city of Milton, being the fire department, would absorb that $18,000 to $19,000 for now inside of our budget. Dan kind of alluded to, he thought we could manage it, but even if we need to find out some funding amongst ourselves as municipalities, I think we just assume that we're going to have to figure it out between the town and the city to make that up.
As I kind of alluded to in bullet point 3, lots of different options. Obviously, 2021 hasn't even started. So we can just wait and see how the year progresses. We could, obviously we can't do B anymore because we have signed contracts, and that was probably not a politically smart idea anyway, but it's an option. Utilizing reserves is always an option, or there's probably some other options that I didn't give consideration to. But as Brian said, I don't think it's anything that we would have to necessarily address right here, right now.
Mhm.
And I understand that we may very well need to. Fortunately, I don't mean it in a bad way. It's the smallest contract. We'll find a way to absorb it. If we have to fund it more, we will just share that.
I agree with Brian.
I do as well, although we need to recognize that we need to have conversations with the remaining townships. If timing were different, we'd be going back and refiguring the allocations. As it is, the allocations that have been worked out in terms of equalized assessed value are skewed now towards the city and town of Milton again. We'll be paying more than the fair share. But I think at this point we have to hold Harmony, Lima, and Johnstown harmless, and they've got signed contracts that they entered into in good faith, and we need to honor those. But going forward, we need to have that conversation, because even if things remain the same for 2022, the shares are going to be a little bit different, and each of those three remaining townships will be paying a bit more.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Mm-hmm.
So is there
Based
any
on this
action you'd like
discussion,
to?
I'd like to make a motion, please. I
Okay, go
move
ahead,
that based on, the big thing I really want is that the amount of 19,820 be noted in our minutes. So I am moving to adopt item 3C from Dan's document, which is to wait until later in 2021 to see how the year progresses from a financial perspective, with the understanding that we would be moving forward with a deficit of sorts, with no services for Koshkanon, the town of Koshkanon, and the total for that is $19,820.
Second.
All right, motion by Beth, seconded by Linda, to move forward with item C, waiting until 2021 and seeing how the financial returns come through, and taking no action on the town of Koshkanon's contract. Is there any more discussion on this motion?
Because I'm gonna email Bill. Do you want me to just say that if you can't come to an agreement on Tebow Point, to get back to us or anything on coverage?
I'm anticipating in the next couple of months, we'll come into an agreement on Tebow Point, but that we're just gonna have to move forward now, assuming we're not. And I don't think that's gonna happen. It'll be a small number that'll come back into the coffers, a small amount. We'll just figure it out later because it's too important to move forward now.
Okay.
That's my input. And I know this is discussion on a motion that's on the table, but I'm prepared after this motion to authorize the signature of the other three town contracts if they come in with the same terms that we proposed them. But that'll be a different motion.
Okay, so on the motion at hand, is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of waiting until 2021 for the town of Koshkanon's contract and taking no action on it, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to Brian's point here. I think he had a motion he was about to make. So go ahead, Brian.
I move that we authorize the signature of the contracts proposed or offered to the other 3 towns. I understand those are in or come, or yet, or we understand that they are coming in. But I move to authorize signature of them. I think we've already, as a commission, authorized the chair or alternative for signatures.
Mhm.
So I think just a generic motion to authorize signature would be probably sufficient.
Second.
Motioned by Brian, seconded by Bill to authorize a signature for signing the contracts for 2021. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Is there any further information to be discussed on our current line item for town contracts?
Do you want a motion saying that we will review all of these contracts by a specific date in 2021? I don't want to run into the same situation that we did this year, where if we're going to change for these other townships, I don't want to wait until November. I feel like we should maybe set it for like March, so we can give them some time.
I think March might be a little early. I was thinking maybe September, because we're still in the budgeting process around September and trying to figure out what 2022 is going to look like. And I'm not sure we're going to be quite ready by then, but I guess that's kind of up to the commission and what you think, Linda.
August has been our historical goal to begin a budgeting process. We might not have everything we need in August, but August has always been a goal to try to start figuring out these things. That's when we've asked fire chiefs to try to submit a preliminary budget proposal.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the commission reviews town contracts in August of 21 for any changes necessary due to the loss of Koshnigan.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Brian. So the motion is to set the meeting of August to determine contracts. Was it specifically with the town of Koshkonong or all contracts?
All towns' contracts.
Okay. To discuss and review all town contracts in the August meeting. Any discussion? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. So is there anything else left on the town contracts to be discussed? All right, we'll move on. That brings us to our next discussion point, which is discussion and possible action regarding the consolidation model or the standalone model. We've already kind of started talking about it with some of the preliminary information that was received a couple days ago regarding the most recent numbers for a standalone or a consolidated model. And Dan, do you have anything else you'd like to add in this discussion for the information that you presented with us tonight?
No, I guess if there's just questions about any of the numbers or, Chief Rhodes and I are both here to help answer any questions because we worked on this one together, so.
All right, it looks like Chief Parker is getting online. Chief Parker, do you have something that you'd like to talk about tonight with this line item?
It looks like he's still connecting to audio, so he probably didn't hear what you just said.
Oh, maybe he was just getting online. Okay.
Yep, he just came
right.
into the meeting now.
Oh, okay. I thought he was trying to speak. Chief Rhodes, did you have anything that you wanted to add to to the model that was presented, the consolidation standalone 2 models?
Connectivity. No, sir. So this has been a long process. We've done everything that I think that the commission has asked us to do to look at. The numbers are what the numbers are. I think at the end of the day, you could move them around just a little bit, but this is a projection. I think we put a lot of work in on it. So I think this is your best answer right now with the current data we have in front of us. The 2 models are exactly what you all asked us to look at. And so I think there's ample information here from a financial perspective to be able to make a decision on what the commission would like to do going forward. And I would urge the commission to try to make the decision this evening because I think it would greatly benefit the morale of the fire department. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, I guess this is the meat and potatoes of the conversation tonight. So whoever would like to kind of start us off, we have 2 models that have been presented to us. I feel like we do have a significant amount of information to discuss on the topics. We can kind of start by maybe some people's concerns or things that they would like to talk more about in either model that
Just
I
don't
think-
everybody start at once.
Yeah. I think through this process, and I'm just going to put it out there, the reason that I did not send any questions in, and thank you for sending this document out, and thank you for all of the work that has been put into this. It's not whether, in my mind, whether we should consolidate, it's with whom we should consolidate. And I realized that through this process, I've tried to start the conversation last summer, and that was something that was definitely put down. It was not something that we were able to actually speak about. And so I just haven't said anything since then. So while I'm not opposed to consolidation in any way, shape, or form, I guess it's just what consolidation looks like for the town of Milton. And for anybody to think that it's all about whose name is on the truck has really bothered me. That is absolutely not what I'm concerned about. But it is about what our voice is and how we're able to protect the department that we currently have. And so I understand numbers are very important. I totally understand about morale. I understand all of these things and the necessity for us to make a plan. But I do want to publicly state that I have some concerns about with whom we consolidate. I guess the other question that I have is the standalone model. And understanding that these numbers have been crunched, please do not think that I certainly have no say in any of the work that has gone into this. I guess I just have a question as to whether when we're looking at the staffing, if the staffing is necessary, in your opinion, for what our needs are, for the size community that we have and what that looks like. So I have said my piece, and those are my only 2. So that's my reason for not sending you any questions, Chief. It's not a question, it's more of a statement that I'm not certain that this is the right fit for Milton. So thank you.
May I ask a question, Beth? You said consolidation, but consolidation with who? Are you suggesting that there are other consolidations that are possible? Edgerton, or what have you in mind in terms of other consolidations?
That's exactly it, Bill. Is that as I travel through this thought process, in the conversations that I had last summer, and then ultimately in the necessity to stop those questions, Edgerton comes to mind for me. I don't know what that looks like because I didn't ever really have that conversation. But I know when I think about the community size, and I have said this throughout the process, every single time that this topic of conversation has come up, where we're going to put our department, our new station. I cannot stress enough how important it is that we know how to do business already in the fit that we're in. So the building, where it's located. So that's obviously a different conversation. But when I think about the size of the community and the general type of responses needed, that to me feels like it is more of an apples to apples comparison versus a community size of Janesville to Milton. And so again, I just wanted to have the conversation. I understand that we have a timeline here, but I think it's important, and I just want to be able to say it out loud because I have tried, but then I was told that we weren't able to have those conversations. So I'm going to say it tonight, and then it can continue on. I just wanted to be able to go on record as saying it.
Go ahead, Linda.
I just want to clarify to Beth, and I thank you for your comments. I did speak previously to former chiefs about consolidation with Edgerton, and there was no interest. I think that a lot of people don't realize that Town Line Road is actually what Janesville will be probably 20, 30 years from now. It's coming this way. That's how fast the development's going. I have worked for a very long time with this department. We have a lot of very good people that we have had in the department that have left for various reasons. We have a very good crew of people that have stayed through, especially all of the changes and the surveys and all of the regrouping that we have done in the department for the last 5 years. But I have to be very clear to you that I believe that the actions that we have taken in the last 5 years in this department and moving towards a consolidation is what needs to be done for the sake of our citizens. I started speaking about consolidation to this department 10 years ago when people were doing it all over the state. And now we are to a point where, as hard as we try, we can't get people to come and work in our station. And we've given all the equipment through various board members that I have served with. We have done equipment, we have done personnel studies, we have done all kinds of studies, we've done building studies. I believe that this model is going to take care of the future of our citizens and this department. And I think it's going to be, I think for the people that we are working with, you know, they asked us for a full-time department. And I'm sorry that we're not a community that has all kinds of money that we can just give it to you and let you do that, but we can't. And we have tried several things in order to keep people, to get people, to pay people, to get you equipment. And we have all done it with a lot of diligence and care, just as much as all of the department people have in their service to this community. And I will tell you that this decision, in the time that I have worked with this department, this decision really doesn't come easy to me because I'm not a Miltonite. I'm a transplant. And maybe that's why I look at what has taken place in the last several years and the growth that we have in the community. And I think we have really done a disservice to our department people. by not doing this sooner. I'm happy that they're going to get benefits. I'm happy that there'll be in a union. I'm happy that we'll have a full-time department. And these numbers, yeah, they are important. They are important because I've struggled through a lot of different budgets for this department. And I think that the functional consolidation is the way to go.
I guess I'm going to echo some of Beth's comments. I do agree that there are some concerns about the future, and the future is not just 5 years. The future is 20 years. The future is 15 years. The future is 60 years. We don't know how those agreements are going to look, and renegotiating contracts is always something that can be a little burdensome and scary, especially when you don't necessarily know how those operational expenses are going to increase from year to year. Are the unions going to negotiate higher contracts? Is that going to affect our total contribution amount? And things of that nature. And we're limited in how much say we get in that process if we do consolidate, because then we become a contract. And I respect Chief Rhodes. I respect the Janesville Fire Department and the management under the city administrator there. But I am concerned about when those people are not in those roles and new people are put in those roles after they retire or leave. We don't know what's going to change, because being in a chief's job is a very person dependent role. The management philosophy, how that particular person understands how to run a department and the management systems they have in place. That all changes by the person that is in that role. And we may have good people in those roles now, but we don't know what those roles look like in the future. And contracts are a way that we can help mitigate some of those, of course, but it still doesn't eliminate the fact in a standalone model, the biggest saving that we have is a relatively fixed cost increase. The cost increases are whatever hard and fast costs that we have. That's our operational and fuel expenses. Whatever the benefits wages raise each year that we determine with union negotiations, we do those. And we have say over those processes to ensure that the taxpayer dollars that are going towards that fire protection service is maximized for the fire protection service output. And I do believe that this model that has been brought in front of us, both models will solve the staffing problem, because the staffing problem is not, it's not one or the other, because in either model, full-time people fixes the problem. You hold full-time people accountable, you pay them a higher benefit and wage, and they work full-time for your department. I mean, you can have them pull full overtime, and things that you can't make part-time people do are volunteers. So obviously the volunteer model is no longer as effective as it was 10 years ago or 30 years ago, but there is still some people that would like to participate in those models. And it's not just about catering to people, but it is about making it affordable and trying to ensure that we do have a good department, a great department that allows us to produce that service that has always been a good service. Milton has always produced a good service. So what I'm trying to say in the end is I understand Beth's point, and I would say that it's a very wise observation to look towards what people are interested in the same outlook as we are and have a similar mindset as we do. And Edgerton may be one of those options. That's a discussion that we just have not had. It's been brought up, but it has not been discussed. So I guess I would agree with Beth's point for all the reasons as I listed and more, but I really encourage good discussion tonight. So who else would like to kind of turn over the floor? Go ahead, Bill.
First of all, I think that the full-time department is something that needs to happen, and it needs to happen as quickly as possible. Every time we have a meeting, we hear about staff shortages. In between meetings, if you're anything like me, you worry about staff shortages that might come up. We have the assurance that we'll get coverage from Janesville, which is very, very helpful. But we know with that could come a cost that we haven't budgeted for. So there's that feeling of unease. So we need to move towards the full-time model as quickly as we possibly can. If we're moving towards a full-time model, by casting our lot with Janesville, we buy a full-time structure that's already there. The difference in cost between the full-time model with Janesville, consolidation with Janesville, and the standalone department is the fact that we have to replicate something that Janesville already has. We have to replicate that structure of administration. We have to separately account for things like human resources for the department, financial services for the department. All of those are built into the Janesville model. And that's where the cost difference happens. And that's not a one-time cost. That's a cost that continues year after year after year as we, in a Milton full-time department, continue to have to support that administrative cost. For the Janesville model, those costs are marginal costs. We're paying a portion of those costs as opposed to the full load of those costs. And frankly, that comes down to being the difference. I also think that there are economies of scale that are really only going to come along as we move to consolidate with a larger department. We've heard Chief Rhodes talk about our equipment needs. Our equipment needs, in fact, may be less under that consolidated model because we're going to be able to share some equipment. We don't have to have everything available at the station that is located in Milton or Milton area. So that there are those savings. I think that there are benefits and advantages to us in terms of the training model that's possible in the consolidated version with Janesville. So there are a number of items that in my mind say that the consolidation with Janesville is not only less expensive long-term for our residents, but also provides a higher level of value for our residents.
Brian or Teresa or Jim or Larry, did you have anything else you'd like to add, since alternates definitely included in this discussion tonight as well? Brian?
Nothing new. All the points stated are taken well. I think we've invested a lot into these two models, and I think there's an overwhelming interest in moving forward on one of these two models now or extremely soon. I think that's just a matter of fact. That's where we are right now. I do think that a decision has to be made.
Thank you for the opportunity to, as I've kind of said all along, again, I'm kind of like Linda, I'm a transplant to the community, but I do in my heart want to look out for the best interest of the community. And I see the community being the entire area, not just the city of Milton. So with that said, I think that I agree with Beth, what she's talking about. I think that eventually we're going to find that all of this area is going to consolidate at some point into a larger fire district, if you will. And I just think that's where we're headed. If you look across the nation and around the state, that's what's happening. And so this sort of sets the groundwork for that to be done. And then conversation can certainly be had with Edgerton and with anyone else in the area that wishes to join in. I mean, this is our initial effort to make it affordable to all the communities, fire protection and EMS protection, and timely, which we have been able to do thank goodness, by the grace of God, with the old system, but I think the new system's gonna be much better. So I'm not opposed to that conversation down the road with Edgerton or anyone else in the area that's not part of this initial consolidation. Thank you for letting me speak.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Okay. I guess I too go back to Beth's comments, but I guess I look at them a little bit differently when she talked about apples to apples. But I look at it that instead of matching, that we really need to look at ours as complementing them, complementing our services between the two, which is, I guess, what I thought we were doing to begin with when we began to work together. We have certain equipment that we would share, and we did share with Janesville. That's partly what brought us together. We also had certain skills and personnel that we could share between the two. And that too worked very well together. And we also then began to share training between the two. And I think it began to work very, very well. John, as you pointed out, right now, we have a chief that does work well together. But that's going to be an issue regardless of whatever community you work with, whoever you team up with. And if you work with Edgerton or Janesville, Beloit, whomever, you have to, of course, once you replace one chief, you have to find another chief who is the best you can find. And it's not just because it's Janesville or Edgerton or whatever. You have to work together as a system. And as has been talked about, hopefully we all begin to work as districts because we have to share all of those things. It's going to become monetarily important to be that efficient. It's going to be significant to share personnel. And right now, I do believe that the best step forward is to move with Janesville.
Go ahead, Linda.
I just want to make a comment about consolidation altogether with Janesville. I feel like maybe there's a little bit of hesitance because Janesville, their fire commission is citizens. And I just want to point out that there's a lot of fire commissions that are strictly citizens, not necessarily elected officials. That doesn't make it a better or worse department. Because I think that anybody still is going to have their heart in what they're doing and care about the people that they're working with. Everybody wants protection, and everybody needs it.
If I can just speak to that a little bit, Linda, that's absolutely not anything that had entered into my mind. Whatever the commission looks like, I think whether this is harsh or not, I would liken it to how our contracts with our outlying towns changed this year. And they don't, I mean, their option is that they don't have coverage and then they have to shop around for other coverage. So if we enter into a consolidation model and have this contract, then we don't have a say as to what our costs look like going forward. And then we have to make a decision. How would we?
We still have a budget that has to be followed. Our municipalities have to give them that budget.
For this year, our municipalities have to give, but they have to tell, those costs aren't going to be capped. We wouldn't have any control over the costs.
Right?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, they would be capped. They proposed an intergovernmental agreement in the current one do bound the chief, who is otherwise in control, has to operate within the budget that's provided.
Capping it at what though, Brian? I guess this is where I'm so very confused in all of this, because
Whatever
we're
budget
looking
reads.
at,
Whatever budget reads that we adopt as municipality.
So I guess that's one of the issues, though, I think Beth is trying to make. What are you going to get for $1 million this year that will be same for the $1 million in 5 years? That expense is definitely going to increase. You can't cap that expense. At some point, it will raise, and we have to approve those raises. So what are you going to get for a level of service for $1 million versus that $1 million in 5 years? Is that kind of where I'm going with this, Beth? I think I kind of understand where you're going, but.
I think
well, yeah, I mean, we're looking.
You're over defining the cap. I'm referring to the cap, meaning the budget year to year, not 5 years down the road being the same budget as this year. I'm not saying that at all. But whatever the budget's approved for any given year, that's what money there is to work with.
I think the assurance that there's fairness is that there are other taxpayers, the taxpayers of Janesville, who are also involved in this thing. So our protection is that the initial formula that's used for figuring out the contract amount needs to be sensible and reflect something. I was very satisfied with the idea of the equalized assessed valuation approach. We might see something like that adopted. And that would mean that it isn't a capricious decision that Janesville suddenly says, well, we'd like to get some more and we'd like a new truck. So let's jack up Milton and Town of Milton. It's a matter of everyone in that shared area would see increased cost. And so that's where the cap would be.
So what's the irony is, and what the difficulty is we don't have a final draft of a consolidation model that's any different than what we're kind of working with right now. In other words, we're still a Milton Fire Department in every sense. Under the proposed consolidation model, the chief has more authority within the bounds of the budget. He has more authority over the decisions being made than he has now. The commission approves from time to time here. So the consolidation still currently assumes that there's an annual budget each given year. And there may be negotiations as to whether or not we want to invest further from one year to another in a budget, and whether Janesville might think that works or not financially. But the current model is that we would still be the Milton Fire Department. The chief would have pretty extended authority operating within the budget.
Brian, isn't that though what you're talking about is the amendment to the current memorandum of understanding? And my understanding is we're talking beyond that. We are talking full consolidation here. For the short term, we've got a memorandum of understanding addendum, or a memorandum of understanding as amended or with an addendum that does grant an operational, an operational form that says we're going to operate like a consolidated department or as close to it as we can. However, when we move to that full-time model, we're beyond that memorandum of understanding, and we're into, I think, a different kind of contract because, at that point, there is no joint fire commission. It's a different governance model.
Well, that's assuming something we don't know and haven't discussed yet, because there hasn't been any draft model that suggests what you just talked about. maybe, Chief, do you have any further input on the future, long-term future model of consolidation than what we've been talking about? Is the chief out there yet?
He had come back into the meet. It looks like he's trying to connect to audio right now. Dan,
There-
is this him on the phone, the 314?
There he goes.
Oh, there.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm switching back and forth to the phone, to the internet and everything else. Brian, did you have a question for me, what the consolidation looks like?
Long-term, I tried to explain that I don't believe we had any specific conversations about a full consolidation being any different than what we in theory have today. In other words, a full consolidation, is it foreseen that it would be something different than there would still be a Milton Fire Department? The municipalities here would adopt a budget each given year, and with you as a chief or a chief, provided through Janesville, through the intergovernmental agreement, would have more authority, or would not need expect as much oversight and approvals from a commission, let's say, or as Bill had been curious about, is it foreseen in a proposed consolidation that this would really be a Janesville Fire Department, that the town and the city of Milton are giving an annual budget of monies to live up to what we agreed to in the model?
Consolidation, and we've I don't know if we can go any further into the finite details unless we make a decision on a consolidation. However, if you take the functional merger, that is the actions towards a consolidation operationally, into some aspects administratively. And that currently looks like what you just said, Brian, is we have the addendum to the shared services agreement that allows this to happen. Once the referendum is passed, I would recommend the full consolidation, which means that all the employees of the Milton Fire Department and all the operations would be fully transitioned over to the City of Janesville Fire Department, and that we would be creating not just the Janesville Fire Department, but it would be the Milton and Janesville Fire Department together, over 6 stations, multi-million-dollar budget for fire EMS response and resources, and one oversight with one management structure and one philosophy and protocols and SOGs and HR policies and accounting. So at the end of the day, that's what consolidation looks like. The commission can, I think, can really impact the budget from the contract vehicle that says, we're going to create a finance commission or a finance committee in conjunction with Janesville to work through the budget every year. And also we could put in the contract cannot exceed X amount percentage per year. I can tell you from my time at Janesville in 2 budget cycles, it is a very tight process. And if you look at the fire department's budget over the many years, there are no drastic decreases or increases unless, since the GM plant closed. So I think for the Janesville Fire Department to come and say, you got to give us another 40% for us to provide fire service, I don't think that will ever happen. The only time that would ever happen is there is a catastrophic disaster and there is, we got to replace apparatus, and that's the apparatus in that Milton station, or something like that. I don't foresee the city budget process in conjunction with a really good contract vehicle with a consolidation. I think we can avoid, I think I don't think that'll ever happen, to be honest with you. What I know about Janesville right now, what I know about the budget process. And let me just say another thing too, really quick, because I tried to talk a while ago and I couldn't, is whoever you merge with, think about their funding and their resource, because if you merge with an organization that is equally underfunded or limited in funding, what you do, in fact, is create one big underfunded fire department. And if you would merge with the city of Janesville, you would not have that problem. We have a very good budget. It's tight, but everybody's budget is tight. We have a good rolling stock, and we have a lot of resources that we could, as Bill says, take advantage of the economies of scale, providing fire and EMS services. So I hope I answered your question, Brian.
So what isn't clear and what really hasn't been discussed recently is in a full consolidation, who owns brick and mortar and equipment?
I think that, don't we need to decide if we're going to consolidate before we actually go into that? One of the things that I'm afraid of here, and I mentioned it to a couple of people, I don't want to go back and redo things. I feel like there's been so many things that have been done, and I feel like these people have given us so much information. I am sitting here looking through what we were given in July. That is exactly the same points that we've all just been sitting here talking about.
Well, no, what you're suggesting, Linda, is that we agree to consolidation, not knowing what consolidation means. My last question was who owns brick and mortar and who owns equipment? That's never been clarified or discussed in the proposed consolidation.
Actually,
Answer your question.
it has. It has. Right here. Scenario number 1, consolidation with Janesville. 15 full-time firefighters and paramedic, 15 full-time firefighter paramedic, 3 full-time lieutenants, existing Milton battalion and battalion chiefs and administrative assistants, annual contribution for capital and equipment replacement, full utilization of their existing fire EMS management structure, deputy, fire marshal, inspector, so on, current budget for operating supplies, utilities, vehicle maintenance, and etc.
That says nothing about who owns the brick and mortar and the equipment.
If you look at the structure that Chief Rhodes is trying to build, what I see is, number 1, we have already been told and we have already known that we need to replace our building. And we have already talked about that, and we already knew that we were planning on doing that. What we can't talk about with that building is the size or the actual building until we decide if we're going to consolidate and have a different type of building, or if we're going to build a full station.
That still doesn't address the answer to my question.
Brian, I can answer your question. Try to, if you'd like me to.
Yeah, please.
So on all the chiefs that I've talked to across the United States that have a consolidation model that we're looking at, it's in the shape of a fire authority. And basically when another city merges into the authority or a larger fire department, the equipment is rented for like $1 a year, and the facility is $2. And then after so many years, 10 years, 15 years, apparatus is usually 7 years. After 7 years, then that equipment becomes part of the rolling stock for the overall big fire department, because they'll need to use that for replacement schedule. And then that's where the $175,000 would come into play over the years to add up to be able to replace that. That seems to be the easiest and the cleanest perspective. If everybody thinks that Janesville is going to buy the equipment and buy the building, that's not going to happen, and that's not what models do. Everybody has to work together and bring their resources together to provide a better and a bigger and a more efficient operation. So being able to rent the equipment, rent the building is the way to go.
So I don't mean to criticize how or when or why anybody who would own these this equipment and brick and mortar. I'm just saying it hasn't been discussed in a consolidation model. We haven't figured that out. We've spent a lot of good time on financing, operating expenses, but we haven't finished these discussions with the city of Janesville on a long-term consolidation model that defines long-term ownership of capital equipment.
Well, I think what the budget presented back in July, the $175,000 for capital, was because the Milton Fire Department wouldn't have any capital. So we wouldn't own capital, purchase capital, and give Janesville $175,000 for their capital. So maybe it wasn't right on the nose, but that's what that $175,000 was going to, was to a capital replacement as our equipment dies out. And, you know, that question has come up every single meeting I've sat on. Well, hold on here. This budget that Dan put together doesn't include capital. And every single time Dan says, yes, it does, $175,000. So whether it's a matter of it's never been discussed or it's never been understood, those are two different things. But the $175,000 has been in there since July. So, I mean,
So Al,
I feel like this is a stall tactic once again.
there's no tactics here, Al. The $175,000 I assumed was the Milton Fire Department's money, and it was shoebox money for capital equipment that we would own long term. It's never been understood by me that this money would become the property of Janesville and would buy future equipment that Janesville would own. I'm not being critical of that aspect, but that's not been my understanding.
In the past, it had been discussed that whatever capital equipment that was owned would be retained by the Milton Fire Department, and the operational expenses would be covered for operating the department by Janesville. That had been discussed. And in that information, yes, there was a $175,000 line item that says capital contribution, but as Brian alluded to, what that contribution was going to was the anticipation that it was retention of the equipment that we were already maintaining, that the commission may exist in a form to retain those capital expenses, the building, the equipment, and that had been discussed, and that absolutely has. And that's why I bring this up, because I am on the kind of the same direction as Brian was on that assumption that that's how that would be working. Now, the chief had mentioned in a previous meeting that yes, there has been previous models of consolidation where that dollar renting the equipment for $1 for the year has worked and has been one method of utilizing the equipment. But I am concerned about the operational expenses and the ultimate liability that we would hold on that equipment if we are not operating that equipment, but Janesville Fire Department operates the equipment, but the money is still being paid for that equipment by the Milton Fire Department. The Milton Fire Department and the municipalities own that equipment until that equipment is purchased by the Janesville Fire Department with the money that's being contributed for that $175,000 a year. So I guess that's partially one of my concerns, but I do agree,
Brian, is that we wouldn't own the equipment. So what liability would be there if we didn't own the equipment?
Well, we do own the equipment until the equipment's replaced. In Janesville, that's part of what was discussed. We rent the equipment. Well, the idea of renting means that we retain ownership until Janesville takes over the responsibility of replacing that equipment. And that's what $175,000 will go to in the long run, is to replace it with Janesville equipment at that stage of replacement for that vehicle.
Well, then couldn't we just give them the equipment as opposed to collecting $1 and rid ourselves of that liability?
That's an option, sure. Bill, go ahead. You have something to say?
Yeah, I think we're a dog chasing its tail at this point. We can't go forward with consolidation because we haven't got enough information. We can't figure out what the actual contract would look like unless we vote to go along with the consolidation. I think there are a couple of parts here. And the first part is the one that I think is actionable tonight, and that is to take a vote up or down in terms of the intent to pursue a consolidation with Janesville. That isn't signing a contract with Janesville. There would still be a contract review, but we don't really know. I mean, this speaks to what Brian is saying. We don't know what the details are, but we're not going to get the details. Why should Janesville put lots and lots of time and effort into coming up with a contract unless there's a serious intent that we want to have a contract? And so I think we need to commit to pursuing the consolidation model. That's the first step in getting the details of a contract that we can then review and have the municipalities vote up or down.
Thank you, Bill.
Is that a motion, Bill?
I would make that motion. I would move that we commit to consolidation and pursue the details of a contract with the city of Janesville.
I'll second.
All right, motion has been made by Bill, seconded by Teresa to proceed with a negotiation of contract and pursue the consolidation model with Janesville. I'm going to open the floor for discussion. Go ahead, Linda.
I'd like to hear the motion read back by Jenny.
Go ahead, Jenny. Can you please restate the motion for everyone?
Yep, I have a motion by Bill to commit to the consolidation model to pursue details of what a contract would look like with the city of Janesville.
Bill, do you agree with that as it was stated?
That's fine.
Okay, Linda, go ahead.
I was just going to tell you before the motion, Larry wanted to say something. I don't know.
Is that all right? Even though I don't have to vote?
Of course, Larry. You're part of the commission. You're an alternate, so you still definitely have a say.
My thought is that I do appreciate the comments about the capital equipment. The real issue is, does either municipality really want that equipment back? And even if you took it back and sold it on the market, on the secondary market, the cost would have to be passed back on somewhere, regardless of who you consolidate with. So I'm just throwing that out.
I think ultimately the largest thing it means is the position we would be in if we wanted to change the department. If we didn't want to work with the consolidation of Janesville in the future, we would have to start from scratch. That ultimately, that's the difference between those discussions.
Well, and we're not really starting from scratch at all. The difference is we're hiring full-time people and we're hiring a full-time chief. So there's not really, if we go to a standalone model, very little is changing other than staffing personnel full-time as far as the structure of the department. I mean,
we wouldn't have a building for them. We wouldn't have any equipment for them.
No. I mean, in a standalone model, like we would have all the equipment that we are currently maintained. And the main thing that would be different would be the additional full-time staffing and that expense of the additional staffing, and then the managing of the HR and finances, I should say.
You know, what I'm hearing is that in a long-term full consolidation, we wouldn't own anything.
Correct. I'm referring to this standalone at this point, but Linda, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say that I see that the idea of a standalone is something that some of you want to think about, but my question is, how long is it going to take us to hire everybody that we don't have right now that we need to fill? Because right now, and in 5 years, and in 10 years, and in 20 years, we're going to have coverage for, in my case, the 5,600 people that are listed on the City of Milton sign. And it's going to be coverage that's timely, and our firefighters and EMTs are going to be taken care of. That to me is, that's the important thing.
And I would absolutely agree with that, but I'm looking at the financials, long-term and short-term. And even in the 5-year plan that was presented to us, the difference in cost, the increase in cost between the standalone model and the consolidation model is pretty significant. The standalone model has an increase of cost from its first year to its last year in that 5-year plan of only $399,000 in comparison to the increase in cost from the first year in the consolidated model to the last year of the consolidated model, $827,000. Those are the operational expenses we aren't controlling as a body because we limit how much the increase is to its organic increase versus Janesville is a much larger department. They're going to run a lot larger staff. They have the potential to pay more overtime. They definitely have a bigger resource pool, but those resources also cost something. And at the end of the day, those resources are accommodating these differences in the prices from the first year to the last year. If that increase is only over 5 years, imagine what it's going to be like over 10 years. That number is going to double potentially. So I'm looking at it as if we can provide an in-house service long-term and provide the same quality of care with a good staffing model, having full-time staff that we can hold accountable to work the appropriate hours necessary to accommodate the job, and potentially hire part-time people if necessary, if it's needed, because there's an opportunity for it, then we should have the flexibility in a staffing model that adapts to the budget that we need to meet. At this point, the only option is a full-time model. There are no other opportunity for part-time people, and there may be part-time people that would like to have a say in the department, who would like to be employed by the department. We don't have nearly as many as we had before.
Right.
We're also comparing two different things. There's paid on-call volunteers and part-time. And there are not many paid on-call people, but part-time people, you can't hold them accountable in the same fashion as you can a full-time person. And you can't expect them to work shifts like a full-time person.
That goes back to what the chief has been asking us all along, what all of our chiefs have been asking us. Do you want a professional department?
And we will be getting a full-time professional
We do
department.
want to, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
We do want a professional department. But my question to you, John, because now I just feel like, okay, I said it before, I've been on this commission for a long time, but okay, let's go to that standalone and let's try it for 5 years. And then if it doesn't work, then we're right back to where we were. And in the meantime, we really haven't accomplished what we are setting out to do. And that is long-term fire, EMS, EMT protection.
Well, respectfully, Linda, I do disagree. Having full-time people is the solution. Having full-time people makes the difference. If you have 15 full-time people, such as the model that is presented, that solves the problem. I'm saying as we grow, maybe we need more than 15 people. And that may come a point, but Janesville is going to have to do the same thing, staff additional people in that station. So it's not going to change necessarily the outcome regardless of who's managing the assets, but it does make a difference in who is using those assets and ensuring that those assets are used for the municipalities that they're going towards. Now, we've always had a good relationship with Janesville, so I don't presume that to be an issue going forward. But
what about the pool of workers, though? Are they going to come to Janesville or are they going to go to Milton? Because
what are you talking about, Linda?
I'm talking about that pool of workers, because you're saying that Janesville's going to do this and Milton's going to do this. Well, remember, there's also Fort Atkinson and Edgerton, and there's a shortage of people. That's why the consolidation is such a good thing.
Well, I've always been under the impression full-time people are not hard to find volunteer and part-time more so, especially volunteer. So if we get full-time people, I don't think full-time people will be nearly an issue to find in comparison. There's a lot of part-time departments or volunteer only that are going to have people come from their department for a full-time slot in Milton. I don't think that's going to be the issue that we're talking about. We're talking about part-time not offering the same benefits and the volunteer not offering the same benefits. But there are some people starting their careers off that are interested in having part-time jobs.
With all due respect, most of what we're talking about is speculative. Because we don't have a definitive contract, we don't have information from Janesville on which to make a decision on fully going forward. And we're not going to until we say we are committed to going forward on the consolidation model. When we do that, we trigger serious answers to the questions that are obviously there and are going to be there.
How's it going?
Until we have a contract in black and white.
Teresa, what were you going to say? You had your hand up.
No, he said it.
And that's a very fair point. And we don't have something in front of us. We've said that. I understand that model. But there are definitely positive attributes of looking towards, for example, Edgerton into a fire district, a true fire district. It allows us the flexibility of having another department that is about a similar size. We can work together and provide a better service for both communities. And we can still provide good service to Janesville. We're using mutual aid. I don't see why having a standalone model and retaining the autonomy to ensure that those resources are still effectively being used, and potentially we're looking towards fire district in a grand scheme with maybe fire district with Janesville and Edgerton and the greater communities in Rock County. That should be the goal we're striving for. But I just don't see going through this consolidation as the answer long-term. I see this as a short-term game without the long-term benefits, both financially and resource allocation.
How are you going to answer the question to the taxpayer that says, are we getting a good deal by this standalone department unless we have something hard and fast to compare it to? And what we would have hard and fast to compare it to is Janesville says, here is our stipulations in terms of the contract, including all of that stuff that Brian is talking about in terms of ownership of brick and mortar and equipment, including the governance model and how that would work. We get all of that if we go along with the motion and commit to pursuing a contract with Janesville. We can reject that contract. We can say no to that contract. We can say it's too expensive. We can say what you've said in brick and mortar isn't acceptable, and we're going to go to that other model that is more expensive, and we'd have something hard and fast to compare there too. Right now, we can't answer that question for the taxpayer. Would I get a good deal in this consolidation model? Because we're not going to have the answers that we need to make that comparison unless we say to Janesville, we're committed to pursuing a contract.
Maybe it's time to call for the vote on the motion.
I'm going to ask one more time if anybody has any other input before we call for a vote. Okay, this will be a roll call vote.
Could you repeat it, please?
Jenny, will you please restate the motion?
Yep. To move forward to commit to a consolidation, to pursue the details on what a contract with the city of Janesville would look like.
Okay, everyone understands the motion as read. So we'll proceed with a vote. Brian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Teresa, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bill, how do you vote?
Aye.
Linda, how do you vote?
Aye.
Beth, how do you vote?
Nay.
And I vote nay. Motion passes. Is there any other information to discuss on this line item? Otherwise, we will move to our next topic. So the next action on this item will be further negotiations between the municipalities, it sounds like, trying to move forward with some sort of contract agreement to be presented to the Fire Commission and then respectively to the municipalities as well. If that sounds about right.
Do you want a motion on that?
It probably wouldn't hurt. So if you want to show going forward what the plan is.
You guys keep moving around.
Jenny, did you understand the motion? Did you get that down?
Of Linda's motion?
Oh, I
ma'am.
haven't,
No, she hasn't. I don't understand what she's saying at this time.
I haven't made it yet. I'll make a motion to have Chief Rhodes, and do we want to, yeah, let's just have Chief Rhodes give us more details on information of Janesville consolidation for our next meeting.
Steve, did you hear that? Were you okay with that?
I'll second the motion.
He might be having some issues with his audio. A motion by Linda, seconded by Brian. And excuse me, Linda, can you restate your motion one more time, just so everybody hears it again? What was it again?
I make a motion for Chief Rhodes to proceed with discussions with Janesville for consolidation.
With the municipalities or with the commission?
No, he would be getting the information.
Okay,
Janesville.
gotcha. All right.
It would be
So-
with the municipality.
Mr. Chairman, I'm back now.
Oh, go ahead, Chief.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Should we continue with the current approach, having Brian and the mayor continue to meet with Mark Freitag and myself in that fashion to flush out the details of a contract for consolidation? Is that what you're looking for, Linda?
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Okay, so the motion is for the municipalities and the Chief Rhodes to continue with negotiations to finalize a contract to be presented to the respective municipalities and the Fire Commission. Right? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding a new fire station.
Hey, John.
Go ahead, Al.
Chairperson, if you don't mind, can I just jump in on that last item just real quickly? Just kind of wanted to give some thoughts. I understand exactly what the motion was, and I understand the rationale behind it. And, I do strongly agree with the comments by Bill Wilson and Brian Meyer earlier. Folks have to remember that Janesville is under the same constraints that we are as municipalities. Not only do they have levy limits, but they also have expenditure restraint. And the idea that if they are put into a pickle and they need to raise $400,000, that it can be passed on to our municipalities and our municipalities alone, couldn't even legally do that through expenditure restraint. They wouldn't be able to increase their expenses by that much without having to go to a referendum. So they are, they're under the same constructs and constraints that we are. But I understand the concern about, different city managers and different fire chiefs have different personalities or different perspectives. But at the end of the day, we're all governed by the same laws. And I agree with Brian and Bill in the sense that, those details will be in the contract, but ultimately, what we have said to the surrounding townships is that it's based on equalized value. And once it's based on equalized value, as they grow, their commensurate contribution grows as well, which only seems reasonable. That in essence, that's the American taxing way. So if a contract is constructed with that matter, which obviously Janesville is in agreement with, there is a cap. And the cap is based on our individual municipalities' growth levels. Because they are already capped as an individual municipality by levy limits and expenditure restraint. Any large costs that could be incurred by them would have to run through those funnels before they come to us as contracted municipalities. In essence, it would be no different than if somebody said, well, we have our own municipal police department, our own garbage collection system, and no longer can afford it, so we're going to contract that out. They're still held to those same expenditure restraint requirements that any municipality is. So it's not as though I think although I understand the concern or fear that somewhere down the line Janesville gets stuck and they need to raise $1 million and they kind of stick it to Milton because their new city manager or their new fire chief just doesn't care anymore. I understand that concern from a humanistic standpoint. But from a logistical standpoint, it can't happen, not unless the laws of the state of Wisconsin change. So the contract, if it's based on equalized value, that is the cap. And as we grow, so would our commensurate contribution grow. But that seems only fair because that's exactly what we just asked our surrounding townships to do as well. So if we keep that same model that we just asked our townships to do with the city of Janesville, if it's fair for us to ask them to do it, I think it's fair for Janesville to ask us to do it as well. So that then is the cap. Now I understand the contracts haven't been negotiated, but I think that that's a reasonable place to start, in my opinion. And I would assume that Max Skagen and City Manager Freitag and Chief Rhodes feel the same because they were a part of those discussions as well. So that's just my 3 cents maybe on that one, but I just don't want people to be afraid of this kind of blank check, because unless the laws of the state of Wisconsin change, irrespective of who is the city manager or fire chief of Janesville or Edgerton or whoever else happens out there, the laws govern how they budget, not what their personalities do. So those are just my thoughts. So long as we have a good contract. That's all.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Al.
Thank you.
And along with what Al just said, part of that whole rationale is we're looking at referendum that would support exactly what Al just said too.
Well, now keep in mind, operational expense, that's the total operational expenses of the department divided by the equalized value of the townships, figuring out the proportions. So regardless if I don't think that it's the intent is Janesville is going to raise their expenses $500,000 just because. Well, there's got to be legitimate reason for that expense increase, whether that be more equipment that was needing serviced or more personnel hired to handle the job. Then that's divided across the equalized value of the townships that support it. So it's more so that you have less control over the operational increases than you would on a smaller department. The larger the department, the higher those expenses will be because there's more services to provide. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, Al. I don't think that they're just going to increase the budget just because, but some of those increases may go higher than the increases that are increased in a standalone model.
Yeah, maybe. But just remember as well, and I know you understand it, but remember the city of Janesville is beholden to their taxpayers too. So if all of a sudden their fire department has an increase of, I know we talked about big numbers like 40%, but even an increase of 10%, they're beholden to their taxpayers too. And there's elections for their council members as well. And that's and being personally a part of 3 union negotiations in the city of Janesville with the Janesville Fire Department, personally sitting in the room, I understand that those firefighters understand that as well. And although those conversations can be difficult and terse at sometimes, at the end of the day, we're all under this. We all have to play by the same rules to a certain degree because that's the way the state of Wisconsin is established. And yes, if costs increase, we'll see an increase as well. But so will the citizens of Janesville, and they're not going to take that very lightly either. So just remember that if we were to go this way, anytime there's an increase to all, to a certain degree, just like we've asked our surrounding townships to do.
And it depends on how the intergovernmental contract is drafted, but a critic would say we just did it to our contract towns.
Yep.
And so if the contract happened to read, and there's no intention for it too, but if it read as if we were a contract municipality to the city of Janesville, a critic would say, well, why can't Janesville do to us what we just did to these contract towns? So it's all in the contract.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, I would like to move on to keep the meeting going, so we can move on to the potential fire department, or new station rather. I'm not sure if we're ready to take action on this specific item. It was suggested tonight that we weren't, but I'll open it up for discussion and we'll see what happens.
I would move we table the discussion of the new fire station.
I'll second.
Motion is moved by Bill and seconded by Brian to table it for the next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, next we'll go on to discussion and possible action regarding the 2021 referendum. So is with the current understanding, with the current financials, do we have enough information to make a determination tonight what you would like to pursue, if you would like to pursue a 2021 referendum? Whether that be in spirit or in letter, we have to turn the letter in by, I believe the due date or the final date for the municipalities was sometime like January 27th, right around there. So if there was something we wanted to do, the cutoff date was January 27th before we had no more opportunity to go in 2021 for referendum. Go ahead, Linda.
I just would like to, I want to be very careful with our referendum because it's very important. And I want to make sure that we do it right and we have all of our facts straight and we have every fact straight. And so I just feel like rushing in to do it in April of 2021, I feel like we haven't even given ourselves any advertisement. I mean, I can tell you, I was looking through some of my old fire commission stuff, and I did actually come across a discussion about a referendum. But we didn't know what we were going to ask for. And we don't want to make the same mistake as the school district. This is very important. We have to make sure that our voters are educated. So I just really don't want to rush into it. And I know that that's going to be hard for us, but let's take our time. We previously talked about having Jeff Romer help us to set up our referendum. I don't know if anybody is still interested in doing that, but I just want to make sure that we do it cautiously and that we have all of our facts. And are we? Who's going to do it? Are we going to pay somebody? How are we going to do this?
I would agree with Linda. I think we're premature in doing this now. I think we do have a step in the direction of finding out what consolidation would be with the approval of the addendum to the memorandum of understanding. So we've got that transition. Should we decide that we want to move closer to the model to make the sudden pain less, we can look at that in the 2022 budget when we start to set it in 2022. So I think delaying the referendum would be wise.
So I think there are some real concerns with.
Just keep in mind, if we don't make a decision in 2021, 2022 is the next time. Are you there, Brian? Go ahead. I'm having some audio issues here, so go ahead.
Yeah, so there will be some real concerns with waiting until 2022. It's going to be a real burden with the 2022 budgeting process. We're kind of doing a transition in 2021 with as far as working with budgeting with the city of Janesville. But I just don't know how we're going to be able to do a good job by April on several levels. So I'm kind of feeling bad about, we really need to do this in April, but I don't think we're going to be ready to sell the package.
And just to clarify, the April election, that's a scheduled election, but you can have a special election during the course of the year as well.
Yeah, we would just need to pay for it at the municipal level.
That's correct.
Do you still have to have an application in January if you're going to plan or schedule one other than in April?
No, you wouldn't need to have that together until later in the year, depending on when the special election would be scheduled. I think Dan probably has had more conversations on it, so I'm going to defer to him.
Yeah, I talked to Leanne, and from what she can tell, even on a special election, it's just that same 70-day rule that applies. So, picking on November, if you wanted to do a referendum or a special election for a referendum, like on that first Tuesday in November, similar to what folks are accustomed to, you're probably looking at early to mid-August of finalizing your language. But then that gives us 7 months to get our ducks in a row and things of that nature.
I would agree that it's a good goal to try to do that. And in the meantime, we could try to get projected costs for a special election. But even if we decided not to do it in November, we would be ready to do it maybe the following April. But I think it's reasonable to say, well, let's make an August goal to be completely ready. Our sales package is in our folder, and maybe we can still do a special election in November. And if we decide that we're not going to do it in November, we'll be ready for whenever that does happen.
And I think timeline wise, it's important to note, and Dan, jump in here, that if the election, the referendum isn't held next year, then the next opportunity you'd hold something in 2022, but those dollars wouldn't be collected until 2023. Correct, Dan?
Correct. Yep.
So that's a long time to wait for those dollars to be implemented into the fire department's budget.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes into the negotiation with Janesville, though. If we decide to defer going to referendum now, what we're talking about in discussing a contract with Janesville is, give us the figures for what it would look like to contract that following year.
So at this time, is there any recommendations on the direction the commission would like to pursue?
I don't know how you want it stated, but I would move that we wait until August and determine whether or not we want to move into an November election.
Is there a second on the
Second.
motion? Seconded
Second.
by Bill. All right. So moved by Teresa, seconded by Bill to wait until August to determine whether or not the commission will pursue a referendum in the November timeframe for the November election in a special election. Is that
Discussion?
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
I don't think Teresa meant that we wouldn't work on one, just that we wouldn't do one in April. I think that's her intent on the motion.
Teresa?
Well,
we're not going to wait till August to talk about it. We're probably going to be
no, but we would have to determine in
August.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can talk about it all you want, but
Let's work on it. Yeah.
decision.
Okay, any other discussion?
Do we need to, are we going to go out for RFPs for assistance, or what is everyone thinking?
Probably
Anybody have any?
a January discussion. Yeah.
Okay, maybe can we
I would
just put
imagine.
that on the next agenda?
Yep, I plan on having this on the next agenda, between the new station is tabled and referendum as well. That'll be conversations for next month. So,
Thank you.
any other discussion on the current motion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. Well, next, if there's no more discussion on the referendum, we'll move into grant opportunities. So go ahead and just a real quick update, Chief, if you have any updates on if this is something that we're going to be able to pursue or not.
Look very favorable.
I think we missed part of what you were saying.
That it doesn't.
Okay.
All right, so they don't look very favorable. I did hear it cut off, but I'm pretty sure Bill kind of filled in what we missed.
Evidently for now.
Okay.
No immediate opportunity.
Well, if there's no more information on grant opportunities, or it doesn't sound like an opportunity we'll be able to pursue, we'll move on to new business. There's no business that I have listed on the agenda, so barring any conversation, move on to the fire chief's report.
Hi, can everybody hear me now?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah, last month, the Milton Fire Department ran 95 calls. The training was emergency medical technician refresher and ventilation. Also, I want to report that because of COVID and the very tight sleeping quarters of the fire station, which if you look at the back dorm, which was basically remodeled and just put up partitions, in very limited circulation, we had to push the beds out of that small enclosed area so our folks could sleep at night without their masks on. When they were in that very tight, cramped area, it would require them to wear their mask while they're sleeping, and that would be very difficult for anybody to do that. So it's created a little consternation. It's definitely stretched our personnel, and so that's a concern for me. But we had to make the move because of COVID. We had to protect the workforce, and it's just another reason why we need to get the ball rolling on the new fire station. I really appreciate everybody's conversation tonight. Their passionate points of view, and I'm grateful that you've made a decision. And I looking forward to trying to work together and build a very strong fire and EMS system. And with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Chief, without remembering exactly what the bunk situation looks like, partitions are not an option at all?
Room. It was never designed to be a dormitory. And so the partitions are from floor to ceiling, but about a 12-inch gap in the ceiling. But it's so small with the COVID, with the virus, you're putting people in that small area. We can't establish a social distancing with that, even with the petitions, because it's an airborne, obviously it's airborne virus, and there's very limited circulation in there for a refreshing of the air, if that makes any sense.
So where is everybody sleeping then?
We got a bed in the spare office. We've got a bed in the day room. We've got and then we use the dormitory. We put 2 in the dorm, corner to corner, and so we're just adapting for the safety of our personnel.
Thank you. Is everybody healthy?
Well, we're trying to keep everybody healthy. Yes, at this time.
All right, is there anything else for the chief? We'll move on to the president's report. Scott here tonight?
Yeah, I'm on, guys.
All right, go ahead, Scott.
The association hasn't met, so due to COVID, we're just kind of, taking it easy. I haven't met, so no new news.
All right, sounds good. Any general items to be discussed that is not on the agenda?
Do we have any toys at the fire station? I remember last year we were unfortunate to have a house fire right around Christmas time. And I remember that you guys had gone out and replaced some, and I was just wondering if we have any there, if you want people to bring you anything.
This is Chris. I can tell you that today a gentleman stopped by and dropped off 2 or 3 bags full of toys for us to give to children that are associated with any type of emergency that we may respond to. So we have a pretty good supply and we have limited space to store them. So I think we're good for right now. But yes, we do have some.
Great, thank you.
I have one thing.
Go ahead, Brian.
I want to thank the city of Milton for offering Inga to help us with these virtual meetings. I don't enjoy virtual meetings at all. But Inga, you've made it very bearable. I appreciate it very much.
Well,
John,
good, I'm glad.
John, I have one other item to just
Go ahead, Chief.
Want to put up on everybody's dashboard here the ambulance too. We still need to talk about the new ambulance.
Did the city of Milton get a chance to discuss that on the last meeting that they had? Town meets next Monday, and it's on one of our discussion points.
We did in fact have it on our agenda, and we talked about it. No action in terms of approving dollars, but it's on the radar, and we're going to be looking at carryover and looking at the possibility of contributing to it in 2021.
Likewise, we'll have that same discussion taking place this coming Monday. As far as the outcome, we'll discuss that in the January meeting. And if there's any more updates to follow on that, I'm sure that'll be brought through email as necessary for everyone. All right, if there's no other general items to talk about, then we'll proceed for adjourning the meeting. I'll be in order.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Brian and seconded by Teresa to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.